Hey everybody, how are you? Welcome into 15 Minutes with Andy. This is podcast number 3. We hope you're enjoying the first couple that we've rolled out there. I guess just a little tiny bit about the premise that if you don't know, our 15-minute segment isn't stuck on 15 minutes. It's just kind of a draw on 15 minutes of fame. We feel like we have some stories out in Northwest Ohio and people with those stories. And they could be stories of overcoming, stories of healing, stories of triumphing, stories that make you feel good, or all of the above rolled into one. And our genesis of this is we just kind of feel like the world needs a lot of those kind of stories. So that's why the podcast began in the first place. Today we're joined by Dave Brobsten, who is the pastor at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Defiance. Dave, thanks for taking time to be with us here today.
Thanks for having us on, Andy. It's going to be a good day.
And I'll let you handle the introduction, but as I said, pastor, Dave, and I'm sure like everything else, it's like a straight line from where you were in high school to becoming a minister. Follow that straight line to where you're at, right?
Exactly. I mean, if we go through some of the intro stuff, I'm a graduate of Marshall University, and I was actually, when I was born, I was wrapped in a green blanket, not a blue one, because the doctor that delivered me was Dr. Ray Hegley, who, if you scroll the names of victims on the Marshall plane crash on the 75 that were killed, Dr. Hegley was the team doctor at the time. So there was actually absolutely no doubt where I was going to go to school. Growing up in West Virginia, you basically had your two choices. You had WVU, you had Marshall. Most of my classmates from high school went north. I went south to Huntington, so I'm a graduate of Marshall, actually majored in finance and econ. So my thing right now is I'm not supposed to be on 15 Minutes with Andy. I'm supposed to be on CNBC or one of those places talking about what today's stock market's doing, what the bond market's doing. That was my dream. I wanted to go to the street. I wanted to be on Wall Street, Jim Cramer running around, picking all the stocks and doing stuff like that. But somewhere in the middle of my college journey, man, I tell you what, God got a hold of the back of my neck and said, that's not where you're going. That's not what you're going to do. And so that's kind of, life took a detour.
Can you pinpoint that moment?
Yeah, I think so. It was one of those really interesting moments for me. It kind of grew kind of like a wave, but I was, at the time, my wife's a graduate of Ohio University, and I was visiting her. She was doing dishes in the kitchen. We had just had lunch. She was doing dishes in the kitchen. And one of her roommates, who was getting a degree in like international marketing, I think, looked and goes, so what are you going to do with your degree when you graduate? And I went, I think I'm going to go to seminary. And I still remember the sink turning off. And, it had kind of had the cutout in those old 1980s, 90s apartments. And my wife sticks her head through the cutout and goes, we're going to do what? And so that was kind of the beginning of it all. The interesting part about that story is that I called my pastor, because you have to go through the church process and you have to be officially approved. And he said, where are you? And I said, well, I'm in Athens. Can you swing by Parkersburg on your way to Huntington? And I'm like, sure, I can do that. There's not a problem. He goes, because I have your paperwork here for seminary. He knew.
Wow.
I didn't. He goes, I've known for a year that's where God was taking you. I had no idea that was going on. So, it was one of these things that you get really excited and you call all these people close to you and tell them what you're going to do. And they're all like, yeah, about time you figured it out. They all knew. I had no idea. So that's kind of that story. And I ended up taking off to South Carolina, going to Lutheran Theological Southern Seminary, and then have bounced. I did my internship in rural South Dakota, served congregations in Illinois, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and been in Defiance now 14 years.
So they knew, and it was still something that was yet to be seen by you.
Yeah.
As you look back on that, what do you think it is that they saw?
I think they just saw a growing in faith. I think they saw a growing in service. And I think that they were able to see that part of my heart that young testosterone-laced 21-year-olds don't let the world see, and probably don't want to see ourselves. We want to be that tough John Wayne, giddy up cowboy. And, we hide that other part of us. But these were folks who were a little older, a little more mature, and they saw behind the mask.
So life takes you to Huntington, or to Marshall University in Huntington, and you've been married for 30 plus years?
32 years now.
So you start to develop roots, because then you start having children.
Right.
And were the kids born in different places?
Connor was born in Effingham, Illinois, in the middle of nowhere, a little town in southern Illinois, where if folks are traveling west, it's where Interstate 57 and Interstate 70 cross. They call it the heartland, the heart of America. Their high school. You'll love this. Broadcasting games for them. The Effingham Flaming Hearts is their high school nickname.
Wow. Never have heard that name.
No, the Effingham Flaming Hearts. Just a fun little town. Their police cars have hearts all over them. It's really a neat little town. And then from there we left and went to the northern suburbs, just north of the North Hills of Pittsburgh, and went to a place called Cranberry Township. So our daughter was born in Allegheny General Hospital, looking down over the stadiums actually being built at that time in Pittsburgh, where Three Rivers was coming down, and PNC Park and Heinz Field were going up. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
She's a Pittsburgh girl, and, I've got my city girl and my country boy, and it's followed their theme of life from the beginning. I mean, they're both wired that way.
So from all that I've researched in preparing for this, life's going along about the way you planned it to go along until, with a few detours, but then I understand you were inspired by the events of 9/11 to kind of veer off, not leave your chosen field, but to now enter another field.
Right. Now, to go back a little bit more, in 1993 when I was ordained, I had a mentor. His name was Colonel John Schmaling. He was a Lutheran pastor in Shelbyville, Illinois. He was also the last chaplain to leave the original Desert Storm. He was the second highest ranking chaplain in theater behind Schwarzkopf's chaplain. So I became an Army chaplain in 93. I swore in, and then part of my path was I wanted to go active duty. I had plans to go to the 101st Airborne. I was air assault qualified. I wanted to go active duty. But there was that part of me that, as becoming a dad, my dad left when I was in second grade. And so I never had that. My biological father has been married 7 times to 5 different women. My biggest question is, who in the hell would marry him twice? But he got 2 of them to do that. He taught me a lot about being a dad. He taught me everything not to be. And as Connor got older and as Nicole was on her way, I quickly decided I didn't want to be absent. And so I put aside my dreams of going active duty as a chaplain. So kind of rolled along, went through Pennsylvania, moved to Michigan, 9/11 hits. And, like a lot of people, I was like, what in the world do I do? What do I do? How do I help? How do I make a difference? My uncle was a fire chief in rural West Virginia. And so if you remember seeing the videos from the mine disasters of a few years ago, all these big F-350 pickup trucks pulling all these trailers to fight mine fires, my uncle was the guy that taught all of them. He was a mine fire specialist. So I was talking to my Uncle Gary, and I said, how do we do this? What do we do? And he goes, go to your local fire department and tell them you want to help, whatever they need. So literally the fire department in Jackson was actually in one of the townships, Summit Township, walked across the street, literally across the street, and said, hey, do you guys need a chaplain? And they took me on board, and really put me through my paces. So I became a fire chaplain then. And then through their encouragement, they encouraged me to go to the fire academy. So I got all my Fire 1, my Fire 2, my hazmat, my EMS stuff. So I was a full-blown smoke-eating firefighter for a few years as my having fun avocation.
Family on board with all of that?
Family was on board with all of it. It was like, you go. This is, it's a family tradition for my mom's side of the family. We go to family reunions, and between my uncles and my cousins, there are very few of us that weren't in emergency services somewhere.
So that takes us now, I guess I want to flash forward a little bit because this is where I guess the meat of the journey begins. Tell me about, and tell our podcast listeners a little bit about January 20th of 2005.
January 20th, 2005 was a day like any other day. Cold Michigan morning, was getting up and ready to go to Lansing, actually, for a conference meeting. Tones dropped, and, there's just one of those gut feelings. If anybody ever has watched NCIS and Gibbs talks about always trust your gut, it's just one of those gut feelings that this was a fire I needed to be at. And so as I'm getting ready to go, I was actually driving, my intern at the time and another pastor riding with me. I called them and said, guys, you need to go. I need to be at this fire. And as I'm heading towards the fire, we get a Mayday call. And one of our firefighters had gotten lost and disoriented. The fire literally came in as a smoke investigation. And they were looking for stuff all over the house. And what happened was it was a spontaneous combustion fire. So for all those folks listening, if you're doing house projects and it says, don't wad these rags up because they will spontaneously combust, that's not a wives' tale. It really happens. But it was in a new part of the house behind a pocket door, and the smoke was dense enough they didn't see the pocket door. So they never got to the seat of the fire. They were up on the second floor, and the basement flashed over. So it meant the whole basement caught on fire at one time, sent a big plume of smoke into the house. Scott got lost and disoriented and ran out of air literally within 15 seconds of each other. And so I got to scene, started counting helmets, realized that we were one short, realized who it was that was lost. Immediately we go into rescue operations. And by this time, the basement fire is rolling. I mean, we've got a 2.5-inch line doing an attack. We've got 2-inch and 3/4 lines doing an attack. Basically, we know that he's upstairs. So our whole goal is to just try to cut the fire off so that we can at least do rescue operations. Rescue operations turned into recovery operations. About 10 minutes into the search, we found him. He was upstairs, wedged between a toilet and a bathtub, and couldn't get out. So once we start the recovery operations, I get to switch hats. I go from being the part of the rescue team, part of the rapid intervention team, to the chief looks at me and goes, you got to put on your blue helmet now, you're the chaplain. So I was actually in the ER with him. One of those weird stories is as I went to the road, I looked at the deputy who was on duty, our sergeant, and I said, you need to go to his house and get his wife. I'm heading to the hospital. You need to radio ahead because there's not a stoplight in this town that's going to slow me down. It's funny because there were cruisers actually blocking intersections for me and the ambulance to get to the hospital. And one of the cops pulled out his radar gun, clocked me at 107 miles an hour down Francis Street in Jackson, Michigan. Which is the equivalent, if you're listening, probably in defiance of going down Clinton or something. Yeah, about like that. So we were moving. Get to the ER. I'm actually holding the IV bag when the doctor pronounces time of death. And then you go into notification mode. We had 4 other firefighters injured with smoke inhalation, so I had to leave him and go tell them. Then his wife shows up and we have to tell her. And then I've got to go with his pastor to the school to get his kids and tell them. And it just turns into a nightmare. Just an absolute nightmare. It was about, 2 weeks of 23-hour days of trying to keep all the plates moving and people. And this is extremely personal for one of my best friends. Yeah, I was going to say one of my best friends. He's the one who brought me into the fire department. He was our training officer. He would pop in the church once a week and just sit and talk for half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. He and I were tight. We'd go to lunch once a week. He was pretty close. So, I mean, that's a tragedy that's terrible enough, but and as we get to the crux of what you deal with now on a regular basis, you had other things going on. I mean, you're doing your own grieving there, and then a congregation member, I understand, passes? My church council president, he was chair of my call committee. He was church council president for 6 years when I was there. Skip had been diagnosed a year before with lymphoma. And Skip was one of the nerdiest guys, the youngest director that Consumers Energy had ever known. We would sit in church council meetings and be talking about budget increases or budget decreases or whatever we were doing, and be like, we're going to do 3.2%. And, 5 of us would have our calculators out, and Skip would be going, your numbers, and we'd all come up with the same answer. And Skip would go, check your numbers, they're wrong. He was just brilliant. You'd go golf with him. We had a scramble team that played all over the place. You'd go golf with Skip, and Skip would be like, well, the last 3 years we were here, here's where we put all of our balls. He was brilliant. But in April of 2005, he died. And we vacationed with his family. He and I were really close. And so in this 3-month window in 2005, I lost one of my best friends who was a firefighter, my church council president, who was also one of my dear friends. And you've got this small congregation who literally, Skip was the patriarch. He was kind of the center of all the activity around the place. And, Scott was our senior captain. He was the acting chief when the chief was gone. And so you've got these two little communities that are both going through incredible grief and an incredible sense of loss at the same time.
And everybody's looking to you to help the healing process.
Everybody's looking to the pastor and the chaplain to do all the healing. We brought in teams for the fire department. We brought in critical incident teams. And they all came and said, we're just going to hang out around you because you're the only guy that the guys want to talk to. We did hours of what I call diamond plate therapy, where I would just get a cup of coffee and sit on the front edge of the engine on the diamond plate and just have guys walk around and take time.
Yeah. So as you're helping a community heal and a congregation, and it is a community because it's a firefighter that everybody knew as well, as you said, you're dealing with this, and I'm sure the first instinct is, I can do it all. I can handle it all.
It was exactly it.
I'm fine.
I'm fine. I mean,
When did you know you weren't fine?
I knew I wasn't fine somewhere around July or August. July or August, I crashed. It was ugly. And I still remember my wife coming in and looking at me going, you want to go to work? And I'm like, no, I'm not ready to get up yet. And, it got to be 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And she came in, she goes, are you ever going to get out of bed? And I looked and I said, I don't give a damn if I ever get out of bed again. I just didn't care anymore. I mean, there was so much poured out and there was so much grief and so much stuff that I had not processed that I literally could not dream of facing the next day. The next day with more people grieving, more people in need, and here's the thing about society. And it's one of the things I tell folks who lose loved ones. The world goes on. So there's still people expecting you to do your normal day-to-day stuff while you're doing all of your grief stuff, all of your other stuff. I just couldn't. I could not think about literally. I remember today not being able to think about, I don't know if I remember how to take a shower. It was that bad. It was literally getting up, walking to the bathroom and going, those handles do something, but I have no idea what they do. And it got really ugly really fast. I mean, into the whole don't shave, drink too much, don't sleep. It just got nasty. Fortunately for me, there was a friend of mine who was watching and said, you need to get help, and you need to get help now.
Did it take a lot of pushing and prodding?
At first, yes. Took a little bit of nudging because, there's that whole stigma. I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm a man. I can do this. This is what we do. And finally, it was the day that I ended up at the cemetery. So the pushing and prodding took about 4 or 5 months because it would have been January of 2006 that I went out to the cemetery to Scott's grave and thought, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Big tree by his grave, and I had about 15 foot of rescue rope and a ladder to get up to a 30-foot limb. I was truly done. And truly, one of my buddies just happened to be driving by and saw my truck and pulled in and went, what in the hell are you doing? And I'm like, man, I don't know. He goes, no, let's go talk. And we went and had a long conversation. And then I called the friend of mine that had been prodding, and I said, So about that help you were telling me I needed, and gave me the name of a guy in Jackson to go see. His name's David DePage. David was an old door gunner in Vietnam who got out, and part of his journey of healing was he became a social worker and a therapist. And so I made an appointment. I went in to see David, and he looked at me and he goes, "I've been waiting for you to show up." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "I've seen what you're doing in the paper. I know some of your congregation folks." He goes, "I've been watching." And he goes, "And my prayer is that you would come to me because you and I speak the same language." As a veteran, I was raised, my stepdad was a special forces guy. I was raised, kind of with a military mindset as an old military chaplain and someone who spent a lot of time with first responders. I needed someone that spoke my language. I needed to be able to drop an F-bomb and not have him be offended. I needed to be able to say just how much, to really explore the pain and have somebody who got it. And David, while looked like this great big Santa Claus, and was as cuddly as most, would also call your BS exactly what it was. And, he'd just say, you can sit there and lie to yourself all you want because I know you're not telling me the truth. So who are we lying to? Let's just cut out the crap and get to what was going on. And truly, that started a journey into mental health that for me continues to this day. Diagnosed with post-traumatic, tried to go with therapy and go to my primary care doc and say, "This is what I'm dealing with," and they started throwing drugs at me. Mm-hmm. Let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And, got to the place where it's like, I just don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be addicted to a bunch of drugs that don't deal with the issue. They mask the symptoms really well, but they don't deal with the symptoms at all. They don't treat what's going on.
So as we're filming or not filming this, I guess for our listeners, I can say this because it's leads into my next question. When did the best looking person in the room right now between the three of us that are in this room together, when did he become involved? And I'll let you tell that part of the story.
So I was at the place where I was tired of the meds. I was talking one day to my daughter, and she was getting ready to take off to go to college. I've always said that my son is my heart. If you look at Connor and I, we look the same, we act the same, our brain works the same way. He's truly a clone. I've always said my daughter is my soul. She sees through all of the bullshit. She sees through all of the masks. And that girl can look at me and she reads my heart. No matter what my body language is saying, no matter what's going on, she reads my heart. She always has. And she was getting ready to take off to go to college, and she was worried. She's like, she went to college in Virginia. I'm going to be 9 hours away. And so we started talking about all the stuff and talking about meds and mental health. And she had gone through some of her own struggles with anxiety and depression. And she said, I've been reading a lot, Dad, about service dogs and what they're doing for veterans with post-traumatic. What do you think about getting a service dog? And I said, well, I don't know. Let me explore that a little bit. So I did some exploration, made some phone calls to places in the country that raise, train, and present service dogs. And, holy cow, $10,000, $5,000 up front, and it's a 5-year waiting period. I mean, that's what it was. So a friend of ours, actually a mutual friend of ours, had a neighbor who was raising and was doing Labradoodle puppies. And they had this puppy that the people that came to get him said, he's black, we don't want him. And he was getting to the place where Kimberly wanted to get rid of the puppy. I wanted to look at a dog that could be trained. And she was known for having incredible litters. I mean, these incredible pups. So I called her and she said, I'll make you a deal. I said, okay. She goes, I'll basically sell you the pup at cost, but I get to advertise when he's fully trained. Hey, that's a fair deal. Mm-hmm. So we got him as a pup. I made some phone calls to folks that were doing the training for service dogs, and I said, how do I do this? What do we do? And so it worked out between a trainer in Defiance who trains therapy dogs and me working with trainers who train service dogs that we work together to get him trained. So he's 6 now, will be 7 in December. We've been a team for about 5 years. Guinness is the famous one of the two of us. You know, the mayor says if something happens to Guinness, the flags in defiance are going to go to half-mast because everybody knows Guinness. We've got one of our houses in the neighborhood sold. Guy walks up to me. I did a presentation to Rotary on Monday about the county chaplaincy in Defiance, and he came up and he said, "We're the ones who bought the house across the street for you, and my daughter's so excited because I told her Guinness lives there." That's just the way it is. So he became a part of my life probably, and like I said, an active team about 5 years ago, and he goes with me everywhere. You know, he's under the tables, he's in restaurants, he's in hotels, he's at work with me, he's up front at church on a Sunday, and he reads me as well as my daughter. I've got congregation members who say, "We can tell how you are, Pastor, by what Guinness is doing. If he's curled up back in the corner, you're okay. If he's out at your feet, you're having a bad day." He just knows me inside, outside, upside down. I've been doing really well between therapy, EMDR, good therapist, you know, a psych who's able to manage meds and keep me on meds that don't just numb me out. I was doing really well, and about 3 weeks ago, had a massive anxiety attack. Just blasted me out of nowhere. You know, I think a lot of it was post-COVID exhaustion, working, doing all the stuff you're doing, but it just hit me out of nowhere, and I didn't realize what was going on. I'm sitting there going, why in the hell am I having problems breathing? Why is my chest tight? You know, and you get to be of a certain age, you start thinking, oh crap, is this a big one, Elizabeth? Am I coming to join you? And he was downstairs sound asleep on the couch, comes running up the stairs to my home office, walks in and puts his head in my lap. And I'm like, that's right. I know what this is again. Because he detected it, knew before I knew.
And that's the thing with mental health, that maybe the people that don't deal with it don't understand, right? I mean, and that is that you can be fine for days, weeks, even months at a time, and then have something like that happen.
Yep.
And I think it's something, and I'll let you expand on this a little bit, because dealing with it personally, but also seeing other people struggle with it as well, it's something that for far, far too long has been living in the shadows. And we've pushed it aside.
Right.
It's starting to come out there, and I think that stigma is starting to go away. And I think this is part of that process, is getting an open forum like this to talk about it.
It is. And, you know, one of the things, and I said this on Monday, and the superintendent, Bob Morton from Defiance Schools, after I made my presentation to Rotary, he goes, "I love what you're doing as a chaplain." He goes, "But what you're doing is more important, is you're being vulnerable and willing to talk about your mental health struggles. That's giving the rest of us permission to talk about them." And, you know, when Scott died, you know, the doctors and nurses all leave the room, and I actually closed his eyes and, you know, did our commendation of the dying and made the sign of the cross on his forehead, you know, in all the soot and smudge. And I said, "Brother, I promise you your death won't be in vain." Andy, I pictured myself going around to fire departments, talking about safety issues, talking about making sure you've got your insurance and your next of kin plans in place, because we didn't have any of that. You know, I mean, a small department of 15 career firefighters and 9 volunteers, that happens in New York, that happens in Detroit, that happens in, you know, it doesn't happen in Jackson, Michigan, in Summit Township. We weren't prepared. And I literally visioned myself being one of those guys going around talking about, I know it sucks to be sitting down when you're a healthy 25-year-old, you know, making sure your will's in place and you have what you want done with your remains and all that stuff. You know, that you basically have your death plan in place. I thought that's where I would be. I did not realize that I'd be the poster child for mental health, but I'm okay with that. You know, I've got big enough shoulders. People want to talk about me. They can talk about me. I'm fine with that, because somebody's got to be the one that says it's okay to get help. And we are getting a lot better. We're still not there yet. You know, when we look, and, you know, you and I are sports guys, and, you know, we talk all the time about sports stuff. You know, you look at what we just went through in the Olympics, you know, and, this mental health stuff. We look at what's going on in tennis. You know, we look at what's going on even in the NFL. and folks are beginning to talk about mental health, but there's still a stigma. Come on, Simone, just you're twisting and jumping. No, you don't understand. I can't. What they call it? She had the spinnies.
The twisties.
Yeah, the twisties. She just, the idea of this young lady who has been amazing and twisted and spun and did all those things that you and I could only imagine doing, just couldn't bring herself to do a simple forward somersault, and all the criticism she took. You get these kids, and that's what they are now playing tennis, who said, I just can't deal with this media pressure. Well, suck it up. You're getting paid millions of dollars to play a stupid game. We're still not over it yet. We still don't see mental health as being health. We wouldn't say that to her if she blew out her knee. Nobody was criticizing Serena, when she hurt herself at Wimbledon, but we were criticizing people who said, I just can't do this because all the cameras, all the lights, all the questions are just too much. So we're still not quite to that place yet. But part of it is being willing to talk about it. There are more people out there with struggles than we realize, than we see, because we do a good job of putting on the mask. I just happen to walk around with this beautiful 80-pound beast who loves everybody and who everybody loves, who reminds people, all right, that guy at the other end of the leash ain't quite right. People have known that since I was born. But we just have given the affirmative stamp to it. So, part of my mission is to give people permission to talk about their struggle. Part of my goal, the stuff that I do as a chaplain with the county, is to help those folks. I mean, especially with officers and firefighters, what they see every day, stuff we can't imagine. Folks from our coroner team, stuff we can't imagine. ER staff see stuff that we can't imagine. Is to give them permission and ways to talk about what they've got going on in their life so they don't end up crashing like I did. My whole goal in life is to try to prevent people from hitting the wall like I hit the wall. Because I was fortunate that at the right moment, at the right time, my buddy was driving by and saw my truck and went, what the hell are you doing? Mm-hmm. Not everybody's that lucky. That was simply there, but for a grace of God go I moment, where I'm hoping that the work that he does, because it's his work, I just walk alongside him and give him permission to do his thing. The work that Guinness does lets people go, there's help out there. There's folks that can help move you in the right direction. And oh, by the way, if you look at me and you don't know me from the outside, kids with a marriage on the way, kids with good jobs, healthy family, I've got a good job, well known. I get to do stuff I love. I mean, for a few years, you and I, shared space in press boxes, broadcasting games and doing stuff like that. I live a life a lot of people would dream of. But when you peel back the layers, there's also those struggles. My hope is that we give people permission to talk about their own struggles. And
that's why I'm sure as people are listening, I'm glad you mentioned that you're still a chaplain and still involved with that, because maybe one of those questions that people are asking is, all that he's gone through, why is he still putting himself in that position? But I think you articulated that as to why you keep doing that, why you're doing it.
It's for that. And part of it is because it really is who I am. It is just part of my DNA. The idea of being in the midst of those types of things. There's an old saying in the fire department, there are three types of people in the world. There are those who run in, there are those who run away, and then there are those who stand at their yellow tape with their phones out.
That's true.
I've never been one who wants to run away. The idea of being one who just stands at the yellow tape, part of my DNA is to run in. It's part of I could not do it. And so, for me, the idea of being the one out there that, most of the death notifications in Defiance County, I'm the one walking up and knocking on your door. But for me, that's not an end. I tell my other chaplains that I work with, I tell the officers that I go with to make the notification, you need to understand we are the first step of healing for this family. we are going to walk up to their door and we are going to ruin their life. You know, I used to think I was ruining their day, but then I really began to think about it. You know, to come to tell someone that their loved one was killed, you're ruining their life. And so how we walk with them, I think in those first hour, the first 2 hours of making sure their pastor gets there, their friends and family are notified, that, you know, we tell them about all of the things that they need to look out for, all the stumbling blocks. And, you know, one of the really neat things is that, you know, as a chaplain, you know, sheriff, police chief, other folks like that, you know, people get a little leery when they say, can we pray with you? You know, for me, I can look and go, hey, I'm the chaplain. If it's okay, do you mind if I pray? And so we begin that process of healing with them. And so that's one of the reasons I still do it, is because I think about, man, what would it have been like had somebody who understood the healing part of it been able to be there when I went through my chaos? And, you know, I've learned this stuff, a lot of stuff, been to a lot of schools, got a lot of, you know, I love me stuff that I can put on my wall. But the bottom line is I learned this hard way. And so, you know, when I was graduating seminary, my theology professor came up to me on the day of graduation and goes, Brobsten, you're going to be an okay pastor, but you're probably the worst systematic theologian we've ever graduated from this school. And I'm like, wow, thanks, Dr. Yago. I mean, you don't know how to cheer a guy up. He goes, wait. He goes, you're probably the best practical theologian we've ever graduated. So I would, you know, if it doesn't work on Monday, why are we talking about it on Sunday? And that's kind of, you know, my way of learning is, you know, I'm an old hard-headed Irishman from West Virginia. You know, sometimes you got to drag me through the mud to let me realize it's raining. And so for me, being able to be one of those people that begins that process of healing with folks, because I've been there, you know, and I can tell them this is what to watch out for and this is what helps.
That's a good place to kind of wrap up in terms of our discussion here. I have a little speed round that I picked up with. I have to tell the story for anybody that's watched the Inside the Actors Studio,
right,
with James Lipton. I borrowed
one of the best shows ever.
I've borrowed a few of them and then kind of one of them at least given my own take to.
Okay.
So, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word that I can say and not be criticized for being a pastor. Grace. Grace. I think that the world needs a whole heck of a lot more of grace.
What's your least favorite word?
No.
We had one earlier. This is can't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of along those lines.
Yeah, same thing.
No. Sound or noise that you love to hear?
What I love to hear is the sound of the front door opening and my daughter's laugh.
That's a good. That's a very good sound. Sound or noise that you hate?
Sound or noise that I hate. Wow, that's a big one. I hate the sound of... I'm going to go back to doors again. I'm kind of on a door thing. I hate the sound of a door closing in anger. You know, someone slamming a door behind them because they're upset, because it cuts off so much of what could go on. You know, stay in the midst of things, stay present, work through things. But, you know, in a society, literally and figuratively, we've done a lot of just walking out and slamming the door.
You mentioned that at the beginning of the podcast that you were in the world of finance and going to go to Wall Street. So this is like a second part of the question. What profession, other than the one that you have now, would you most like to try?
So I will go back before that to my childhood days. What I wanted to be when I was a kid was a garbage man.
Really?
That's what I wanted to be. I want to be a garbage man. I remember an old Mr. Rogers Neighborhood where he was out with the showing people a day in the life of a garbage man. I had a book about being a garbage man. I had a little like Tonka truck, garbage truck. I'd want to be a garbage man. My daughter says that's what I do now. She goes, instead of picking up people's physical garbage, You just have to deal with their spiritual, emotional garbage. So, but yeah, I'd want to be a garbage man. Just out on a truck by myself all day, driving around picking up crap.
Well, you know the mayor of Defiance pretty well. You've already talked about him. I'm sure he could get you.
He could hook me up.
At least for a day. One of those professions. One of those professions for a day. Last question, and I'll let you get out of the hot seat proverbially here. How would you like to be remembered? We all, I think, in some way think about our legacy. How would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as one of those people that gave people permission to be real, to be authentic. I think that there's just so little authenticity in the world, that we all try to be what others want us to be. We all try to be what our parents placed on us and the weight on our shoulders. And I think that for me, I want folks to be able to look back, hopefully at their memories of time with me when I'm gone, and to be able to say, you know what? We didn't have to have our makeup perfect. We didn't have to have the right clothes to be around him. When we were around him, there was a realness about him that invited us to be real. So if I can be a guy that lets people feel authentic, that's how I want to be remembered.
And I guess I lied because I just thought of this question. I know the answer because I saw a Facebook post, but do you feel like now that where you're at, I mean, you've been to multiple congregations.
Yeah.
You feel like this Northwest Ohio and specifically Defiance is home?
It is. It very much is. Lived all over the place, South Dakota. Since we've been married, South Carolina, South Dakota, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and now in Defiance for 14 years. There's something about the little community. There's something about the little communities because, I've done a lot of work in Williams County, either, on another station or even working out up here before Williams County had their own chaplains, which they do now in the Sheriff's Department, doing work up here as we spilled across. This little corner of Ohio, I never thought about a hillbilly from West Virginia, up in the flatlands of Northwest Ohio. But this is definitely home. And with a son in Findlay and a daughter up in Michigan, I'm an hour and a half and an hour away from each, weddings on the horizon, hopefully grandkids on the road. And we're the perfect middle spot for them. So, I think y'all are stuck with me for a while.
All right. Good to hear. Dave, thanks for taking the time to join us
Andy.
on our podcast, and wish you nothing but the best down the road. That is Pastor Dave Brobsten from St. Paul's Lutheran Church, our guest on 15 Minutes with Andy. Hope you can join us next time here as we continue to talk about stories of ordinary people who we feel like are doing some pretty extraordinary things right here in our backyard.